Greetings, everyone, again. This is Brenda Wilkerson. Just wanted to welcome you to our conversation today about computer science and IB schools. We're excited that you wanted to come and find out more information. And so I don't want to waste any of our great afternoon time. Just want to say a great thanks to Mary Beck from Senn High School, who has agreed to share her wonderful innovation and wisdom and knowledge that she's developed around making it work in her school with all of us. So on my call, I have my staff member, Carmen Edwards, and Charnel Jackson is also with us. And so if you have any questions at the end for us, we'll be happy to answer them, but you will probably want to be spending all your time listening to Mary. So without further ado, let me turn it over to Carmen for some logistics.
Okay, so everyone, while Mary is presenting, if you would kindly mute your phone. If you look up on your screen to the right, there's a mute yourself button in green. Please hit that button and stay on mute until we get to the Q&A section. Also, if you have questions during the presentation and you don't want to forget them, if you click on the bubble on the right-hand side of your screen, you will find a type your message here block at the bottom on the right. You can type whatever your question is. And at the end of Mary's presentation, we will be answering any questions that were typed in on the screen. So again, please mute yourself for now. And then when we get to the Q&A section, as you have questions, you can unmute your phone. And without further ado, I will turn it over to Mary Beck, principal of Senn High School.
Thank you, Carmen. Hi, everyone. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're doing with CS4All and how we're incorporating the principles into our MYP design class and how we're going to use this one kind of the computer science, for lack of a better term, mandate, but requirement, how we're incorporating that as well as we possibly can into what we think is somewhat creative and hopefully will really benefit our students. Just a couple of disclosures, I guess. I clearly have a cold, so I apologize that I don't sound that great. And then also I am a new principal. I'm new to Senn this past year. And I also am relatively new to IB, so I still have a lot to learn when it comes to both those things. So if you have ideas, or I may not have all the answers, you might have a lot more IB knowledge than I do, but I'm always willing to explore. And I have a lot of really strong IB people at my school, so they're really helping guide and really put all this forward. And they're really doing the work. I'm just supporting it. So I just want to put that out there. All right, so to get started, this is just a really quick breakdown of who we are as a school. We have about 1,350 kids. About 20% of our students come in as IB Magnet, 20% come in through Senn Arts, and about 60% are neighborhood students. However, we are wall-to-wall IB. So of course we have MYP for all students, and it informs all our coursework and ultimately our practices. And then overall, our IB program is relatively strong. About 50% of our students who come in through the Magnet program enter the diploma program, and about 83% of them pass the diploma in the end. So they actually do a pretty good job of, actually a really good job of getting students through the diploma rate. So I do feel like there's a level of expertise in my building that I can really depend on when it comes to giving strong access to the rigorous IB curriculum. And I think that's important because there's also a number of students who don't enter full DP, but they still have access to certificate courses. I also have my Senn Arts program where they all have very specific disciplines and a very specific program. They have all honors MYP courses, and they also have access to a number of certificate courses. So about 40% of my students automatically have access to junior and senior year IB curriculum. And what I was finding when I first came in, so as a new principal, it's really easy to be critical of data and have fresh eyes, and I think on some of the practices. So a lot of my neighborhood students, they received MYP curriculum, obviously, because we are wall-to-wall, and some were definitely recommended for honors courses. Not many entered the diploma prep program, but a few of them were taking certificate courses at junior and senior year. We had strands within our neighborhood program and one focused on digital journalism and one focused on environmental science. Both these strands are still very much alive, and they're well supported by our partnership with Loyola. However, we were finding that even within our neighborhood of the 60% of our kids in our neighborhood program, the number of kids registering and actually signing up for digital journalism or environmental science was about 10%. So that left about half our freshman and sophomore population taking double period math or reading classes or both. And this was difficult because by the time they got to sophomore year, many of them were still taking double period math and science, and they never had access to the certificate courses. I don't deny that many of them needed extra support, but we started looking at different ways they could get that support. But because of these double period choices, they weren't given the choice between digital journalism or environmental science. And they actually, we were giving them this really strong, we are giving them this really strong MYP core curriculum because all our students are getting it and it's informed. It informs their practices. But by the time they got to junior year after the ACT, there really wasn't much left for them to do. So their senior year for most of our neighborhood students was pretty light in terms of coursework. I found some data that actually informed my theory. So this was just something I noticed when I saw our master schedule in the beginning of the year, but then we started looking at data and using this idea. I used to work for the AVID program and I was the high school manager, so I'm pretty well versed on access to rigorous coursework, and I am of the belief that the more students have access to rigorous coursework, the more successful they're going to be in their post-secondary endeavors. So I just think that's important. So anyway, we're a level 1 school. We had 70% growth on EPASS, which is pretty great. And we had a good attendance rate, good FOT, 52% college enrollment rate, which just stood out to me like a sore thumb. And then 74% college retention. So of the kids who are going to college, they're doing pretty well there. So to me, this number was really huge. And I don't think it's a coincidence that 52% is just about it's just slightly higher than what our magnet program enrollment is. So I think, there's neighborhood students who come in through that program who are going to four-year universities, but it's almost by accident and not by purpose. So we use this to inform what our next steps were in creating this design course. So the first thing we did overall for the whole school was ask each department to add more college credit-bearing courses to their course offerings. So to increase, because we knew that we had expertise in our IB curriculum and we knew that we had strong instruction and strong curriculum that existed, we thought, why can't we spread that a little bit wider? And so now that we kind of know what we're doing in these areas, we can expand our offerings. So we added, this is just a handful for math and science. We added more in English and social studies as well. But in math and science, we added IB sports and health, IB computer science, IB environmental science, dual credit pre-calc, and then AP stats. I point to these specifically because by adding these classes, we then thought, okay, now we're expanding this. We need to create the pool of students who are ready to access those classes in a couple of years. So clearly we have all these double period classes, but they're not getting kids prepared for IB coursework. So we thought about our freshman year offerings, and that's where we came up with the design class in partnership with CS4All, and knowing we were going to add CS4All, we used that to inform our freshman year design class. So we've, at this point, pretty much eliminated our double period algebra and we have a few RLA classes, but not as many. And all students are going to take the freshman year design classes rather than a double period math. And we decided we would need to use this class as a way to not only increase the math skills and the logic and the analysis that they need, but also create some other really strong habits that the students will need going forward so that they can access the IB curriculum at junior and senior year. So in February, we invited a large number of people to an intro meeting. So I invited all my math department, all my science department, all my technology department, my counselors. And because we are so lucky to have this great partnership with Loyola, I had reached out to them and they sent a professor in computer science, their head of science education department, a professor in robotics, and a biology professor. And then I forgot to add, they also had an engineering professor there. And this was really important because in this meeting, they shared with us a lot of the skills that they expect students to have at freshman and sophomore year of college. So we started with this conversation saying this is our end goal. We want kids to be science ready. And by science ready, we're using that as a really broad term. In general, just being curious and being really strong problem solvers, which is what a lot of these professors said is what they needed at the freshman year, but they didn't see our students having. From there, in March, we formed some working groups. And what each group did was they chose a different one of our new courses or existing courses so that they could look and see what the skills were for IB Sports and AP Stats and what were the commonalities across those courses so that we could then start to push those down into the 9th grade and start building them from the 9th grade into the 10th grade so that by the time the kids hit senior year and they choose whether they're going to go into IB Sports, IB Environmental Science, IB Computer Science, they will have the skills that they need to apply. And we're really focusing on the skills that will just go for, the really strong academic skills that go with the project-based learning, which I'll talk about in a second. The Loyola representatives were part of our curriculum building, which I think is important, and they did bring some resources to the table, some mentorships, and even starting to think about internships and other summer opportunities for our students. We incorporated ATL, learner profile, and key concepts so that there is a strong IB presence within the design course. And then there's a handful of sophomores that will be taking it next year, and this is going to be where their personal project lives. So as we prepare the 10th grade course, which will really put on full force next year, that's where their personal project is. I got my own.
Thank you.
And so then we use these skills to ground the scope and sequence in March. And then since then, the group each month, the group got a little bit smaller and smaller as the work got more and more intense. But there's a group of about 5 to 6 teachers who meet almost weekly, and they're working with the principles of project-based learning, which one of my teachers is just excellent at, and develop the units for the course. They're now really building the lessons. And I think they're actually having a lot of fun. We were able to get, with some of our end of the year spending, the Raspberry Pis and a lot of like the fun stuff that's part of CS4All and really promoted. And they've been playing with this stuff for the last couple of weeks and they're having a lot of fun. And I think they're really excited for the course. We're using a lot of the principles from CS4All in many of the activities. And then, like I said, we are adding the personal project for the sophomores in the classes that we're offering. They've also committed to some summer planning, which I think is great. Just to give you an idea of what our course sequence will look like. Time when we made this, we were calling it MYP STEM. We've now changed it to the MYP design course, but we're going to use that. And some students, because we didn't want to ignore the fact that we have a really strong digital journalism strand. All the students, a lot of the activities involve key concepts that they'll need if they go forward in that strand. So some of the students will start exploring, well, they'll all do blogging and they'll do different things that we'll need to prepare them to choose digital journalism. And they might choose that path sophomore year, which means they won't go into this course. But this will then culminate by next year, we'll have a dual credit digital journalism class as well. It'll be in broadcast journalism with Loyola. So there is still a strong post-secondary grounding for that one too. But ultimately, most students will probably choose to continue into year 2, which we're designing for next year. And then they'll choose one of these different pathways for their rigorous course at the end to get them ready for post-secondary. Some of the challenges we faced were identifying the right team of teachers. And if you choose to do this, I mean, I think you need to find teachers who are creative, They understand project-based learning. They're okay with kind of like the chaos that some of this really promotes within the classroom. They like the challenge and are okay with taking risks. We are giving up our double period algebra, and I know that it's a risk. We have pretty good growth on the ACT, and a lot of that could be attributed to the double period courses that we have. However, my school specifically has had a hard time producing data that says that that's actually the case. And so given that, we're going to try this, and really, if we identify students who are really struggling in algebra, we've got a number of resources for tutoring and different aspects we can use to give them extra help. But I really do feel that having the creative outlet and the project-based learning in the design course is going to be just as important to their learning and their development as students as a double period algebra class would be. And then there's also a handful of kids who might not be able to take a foreign language freshman year, so we'll probably take a hit on our MYP reauthorization, because not 100% of our students will have 4 years of foreign language, but I'm willing to take that hit if they need RLA instead. And then finally, I'm working with CS4All to make sure that we can use the MYP design course as a computer science credit. So those are some of the challenges we have. And now I'm ready for some questions.
Okay, so we are at the Q&A section. We don't have any write-in questions, but please unmute yourself and ask any questions you might have for Mary. We have also videotaped this this event, so we will be publishing that next week to all the folks that were invited to the call.
So when you ask your question, or just to get us warmed up, if everyone on the call could kind of bump in, I know this would be a little bumpy because we can't see each other, and say your name and the school that you are from. Can I get one brave soul to get started?
Brenda, we do have one question from Hallie. She said this
Okay.
MYP design course will not count for science credit, right? She's asking the question.
So that's an interesting question. And so I have an appointment set up to meet with the head of science. In the past, we've entertained having a course count as 2 different types of credit and have had challenges with that. I have since been told that the potential does exist for a course to count for 2 different things. If that's the case, so would normally the design course count as a science?
Not for us.
What would it count for normally?
Well, at SEN, we offer it to our 10th grade DPP sophomores. So it just counts as one of their MYP, and that's really where their personal project lives. So
Okay.
we count it just as another MYP credit. It counts as a technology credit at the sophomore year for diploma prep kids.
So what I probably would have to do is go to the IB folks downtown and say to them, you know, we'd like to take a look at the course, have them say, I believe that this should count as, you know, they're the ones who have the authority to speak to that. And then also talk to the science department, because if it's going to be a science credit, then the head of science has to approve and say, yeah, this counts as a science credit. But as far as I'm concerned, I feel like we've got a couple of other examples, both of which escape my mind right now, that was shared with me, where a course could count for more than one thing. And if that's something that can be done, I don't have any problem with it. But we'll have to put that question out there and then get back to folks on that.
So this is Hallie again, just as a follow-up question for Mary. So I'm asking this because I am a science teacher and I'm teaching computer science next year to seniors through our science department.
Okay.
In the way that you've integrated computer science into your MYP curriculum, do you think it would be appropriate to code it as science, or is it really, we've been talking a little bit about design within our science department, so we've had a very science lens, but I'm curious if you think that it would be a good fit, or if it really is a different, it brings in too many different topics and it shouldn't be coded as science. I'm not sure we even want to.
Ultimately, if you, I'm sorry, what did you say at the end?
Sorry, I'm not sure it's even something we would want to do. I was just curious how it might or might not fit.
So if you look at our course sequence chart, I'm sorry, we actually debated this a little bit because we weren't sure if it should live in math, if it should live in science. And it seems, especially with project-based learning lens and like approach that we're using, it's much more science-y, for lack of a better term, because we're using a lot of like the scientific approaches that we use in our IB physics courses and our IB biology courses, which is really hands-on, students exploring questions, and we're using that in this course to prepare them for the other IB science courses so that they can use those as their transferable skills. So, I mean, I think it lives in our science department because of that, but the group of teachers who's planning it, there's 2 science teachers, 2 math teachers, and our technology teacher. So it's kind of a hodgepodge. I think in my approach, and the way we crosswalk a lot of the skills is that we use a lot of the inquiry-based skills that are required at the science level to make sure that's how we're going to gauge some of our success in the 9th grade, if that makes sense. So like those are the skills that we're really focused on. So like NGSS and those skills are a lot of the ones that are incorporated, plus whatever we decided was important here for the 3 main science courses they're going into. So it lives in our science department. I don't know if it necessarily has to be a science course. I'm okay with it being the computer science requirement. And then from there, allowing students to choose if they want to continue within the science realm, I guess. Would it help if I shared the curriculum with you?
That would be great. Thank you. That'd be wonderful.
Yeah. Like I said, we've got most of our units planned. They're still developing lessons, but I can, in the next couple of days, I can share our outlines too. It's rough. I mean, because we've just been planning it this semester, and as you all know, this semester there's been a lot of starts and stops with everything else happening. But they're pretty focused and they've got a lot done. So I can share with you what we have so far.
So would we be able to hear who is on the call and what your thoughts are towards being able to incorporate CS into your IB programs?
Hallie, what school are you from?
Sorry, I'm at Back of the Arts College Prep.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, so. And we teach in our MYP sequence, we currently have very full student schedules. So that was why I was asking, because I'm in the science department. And it's not obvious. We don't have something like double algebra where we could easily steal a period and add a new course. So trying to think about our options.
It wasn't that easy. I did have to fight with the math department about it. Do you have some place where your personal project lives?
Our personal projects live as an extracurricular, so our students have to do them on their own time. And at least this past year, we've split up so all teachers advise different students and see them through the process. Our students take PE and art and foreign language freshman and sophomore year, and so they're in.
Right, it's
every student is fully booked.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if I could give up my own physics class, but that was where the science credit question came from.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll keep that in mind too. Any other thoughts from anyone or other questions? Okay, well, I have a question. So as everyone is probably aware, in passing this graduation requirement, IB was one of the areas that we are, as someone said, it's very full, it's very focused, it's already very rigorous. And so it was one of the areas that the board decided to grant a waiver for. We are also designing a waiver for CTE and for some other kind of advanced programming. So, but in looking at a logic model and trying to figure out how to grant those waivers, in the case of CTE specific, a student can come to a school and start a CTE program but not complete it. And so based upon them not completing the program, they may still end up with the requirement to complete the computer science credit. In terms of IB schools as they play out across the district, is there when does a student officially become and stay an IB student? I mean, what makes them IB sort of like forevermore, such that they are exempt from now on from taking a particular requirement? Is it freshman year? Is it so many years in IB? How should my thinking be on this?
So I don't want to speak for everyone, but they don't, this is Mary again. They don't fully enter the diploma prep or the diploma program until junior year.
Okay.
And I think different schools have different requirements, but for us, it's once they commit to the full diploma program at junior year, then junior and senior year, we have maybe 3 kids a year leave after junior year. So it would be by senior year at my school. I don't know if other schools have different requirements, but you can't enter the diploma program to actually finish an IB certificate or an IB diploma until junior year.
Okay.
Anyone else have something different?
And Mary, what happens if, for whatever reason, the person drops out after junior year? Or can they?
Well, at my school, you don't receive an IB diploma. And if you drop off after junior year, you don't have access to any of the other IB courses. So they would not be exempt from those other requirements. I don't know if other schools are different, if they would still give them access.
And does anybody have anything different?
This is Holly. I mean, we're the same way. That's why I didn't speak up. Ours apply, and no one is even designated prep right now until you apply in as a junior, and then that's more or less the group, and they're cohorted from there. So
In your case, if a student doesn't become go into the DP program, would there still be room for them to take a CS course?
Well, we have a separate situation right now because I'm teaching computer science to seniors. So right now, the issue, I think the challenge I have is trying to figure out how to adopt an intro level course to the senior level, but we wouldn't have the sequencing question. And I think there's things to be said for offering computer science first, but because our MYP sequence is so full and is uniform for all of our students, we want to keep all our students, including the diploma program students, in the same courses. We didn't find a way yet that we put it in freshman or sophomore year. So we're piloting it as a senior course. And then of course, if it stays in the senior year, it's very easy for anyone who's not in the diploma program to know that they're not in the diploma program and enroll. But that is likely to be something that evolves for us as a school as we figure things out. And that's, of course, my administration's, I'm the computer science teacher. It's my administration's decision.
So, and that makes perfect sense. There are schools, like some of the highly selective schools are opting to have their 1 credit CSB satisfied via AP computer science, because that seems that works for the type of students that are in the school. So just for clarity, we are not requiring an introductory level computer science. If it continues to work at the senior level, that's perfectly fine for us, as long as that curriculum meets the requirements for a computer science course. Because we were looking to do an 85% fit for a course, the introductory computer science course, Exploring Computer Science, is a good fit for that. But it is not, it will not be the only, it's not required that the course be met at the freshman or sophomore level. And as you mentioned, you know, we also did that by design, hoping that students would, if they had developed an appetite and the school was able to support it, wanted to go on and add an additional course or two, that they could create a pathway as it, you know, appears that Mary is doing here in her program. And so by starting it early, that gave them that opportunity. So we're in a formative stage, of course, over the next few years, and that's why I'm really reaching out to get input from leaders like yourselves as to, you know, what makes the most sense in especially specialized schools like yours.
And I think that's been really helpful because in the beginning of the year, when I was considering the CS4All, and I knew that we had started talking a little bit about creating our own course, it was nice that we had the flexibility, because I almost didn't do CS4All because I felt like I wanted my teachers to have the freedom to create this course. So I think like the freedom that you're giving us, Brenda, I think that's really great. And it's helpful so that we can meet the requirement, but like do what's right for our kids.
Well, I'm glad. Thanks for that feedback. You know, we want to make sure that, you know, it's not a mandate in that it's a one size fits all at all. Though we do have the requirement that, just as with any other course, that we are introducing computational and design concepts for our students, and that we don't. And of course, this would never happen in any of your schools devolve into, you know, a music and computer science course where they're listening to music. Okay, so of course, you know, we want to make sure that we're hitting the right level of rigor. But we definitely want to make sure that more students have an opportunity to take advantage of this versus fewer. And Mary, I have to say thank you so much for your leadership and your willingness to jump out there and figure this out for your students. I'm very grateful, and I'm also grateful to everyone who's on the call, who you know, called to participate, listen in, and you know, if you do have ideas past this meeting and you just don't want to share them with us now, or they come to you later, you know, our email boxes, phone numbers are always open. So please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. And I really appreciate the offer to share the curriculum. Just even if we don't use it, I'm very curious to see it. It would be helpful for us.
Yes, I will talk to my science teacher and see when they're ready to share it.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, we're just so thankful for Mary for putting together this great presentation and sharing all this great vision with us. And I just want to give one more opportunity for people to jump in there, ask a question, share a remark, thoughts, insights, whatever you want to say. We're all ears.